You want to know the difference between a ghost and a legend? Time. Give a ghost enough time, and people start telling stories. Give those stories enough time, and suddenly, you've got yourself a legend. Sarah Phantom Chen had been a ghost for exactly 18 months, 3 weeks and 4 days. Tonight she was about to become a legend. But let me back up, because every good story needs context, and this one's got layers like a Russian nesting doll made of dynamite. The thing about being dead, officially dead according to 3 different government agencies, is that it gives you a peculiar kind of freedom. No credit history to maintain, no family to disappoint, no future to worry about screwing up. When Marine Sergeant Sarah Chen died in that IED blast outside Kandahar, she took with her a lot of inconvenient truths about black ops missions that never happened and people who were never there. The woman who crawled out of that wreckage 3 days later, well, she was somebody else entirely. Sarah, let's call her Sarah, since that's the name on her current fake ID, had spent the last 1.5 years perfecting the art of being invisible. She delivered food in 17 different cities, stayed in each place just long enough to earn gas money for the next town, and kept moving like a shark that would die if it ever stopped swimming. The delivery driver thing wasn't just cover, it was camouflage. Nobody looks twice at someone bringing them dinner. Millbrook, Pennsylvania was supposed to be stop number 18. 3 weeks max, earn enough for new papers, then disappear again. But Millbrook had something the other 17 cities didn't. Detective Ray Morrison, Jake's older brother, and the one cop in America who'd figured out that the Phantom of Kandahar, the sniper who'd allegedly died in that blast, was very much alive and delivering General Tso's chicken within a 50-mile radius of his jurisdiction. Morrison hadn't turned her in. Instead, he'd made her an offer. Help him clean up Millbrook's growing drug problem, and he'd help her disappear for real. New identity, clean papers, a chance to start over without looking over her shoulder every 5 minutes. The deal was simple. Morrison would feed her intelligence about local dealers and suppliers. Sarah would use her unique skill set to gather evidence that would stick in court. Nothing too flashy, nothing that would draw federal attention, just good old-fashioned police work with a very particular kind of backup. Which brought us to Tuesday night and the phone call that changed everything. "We've got a problem." Morrison's voice crackled through her encrypted phone. "Big one. That house on Maple Street? It's not just a distribution center. It's a way station." Sarah pulled her Honda into an alley behind the Dragon Express and killed the engine. Way station for what? Human trafficking. Girls, mostly teenagers, coming up from Mexico. They're using the drug operation as cover, moving them through Millbrook to buyers in Philadelphia and New York. Morrison's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "We've got maybe a 6-hour window before the next shipment moves out. 6 hours to get evidence and get those girls out of there." Sarah closed her eyes, seeing faces from her other life. Villages in Afghanistan where girls disappeared in the night. Compound raids where they'd been too late, always too late. How many? Thermal imaging shows at least 8 heat signatures in the basement. Could be more. Backup? State police are 40 minutes out, and that's if we're lucky. FBI task force is 3 hours minimum. By then, those girls will be scattered to the wind. Sarah started the engine. "What do you need me to do?" "What you do best, Phantom. Disappear 8 armed drug dealers and make it look like an accident." The house on Maple Street squatted in the darkness like a cancer on the landscape. Too many motorcycles, too many shadows moving behind curtains, too many ways this could go sideways. Sarah parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, moving through backyards and along fence lines like smoke given form. The thermal scope Morrison had loaned her painted the story in stark detail. 9 men on the ground floor, 8 figures in the basement who barely moved, drugged, restrained, or both. Guard rotations every 20 minutes. 2 sentries outside, both more interested in their phones than their surroundings. Sarah smiled in the darkness. Amateurs. She'd brought the Dragon Express delivery bags as cover, loaded not with Chinese food but with enough creative chemistry to turn the night interesting. Smoke grenades liberated from a National Guard armory. Flashbangs that had fallen off a truck. A few other toys that Morrison definitely didn't need to know about. The plan was elegant in its simplicity, create chaos, extract the hostages, leave the dealers alive but very, very sorry they'd ever heard of Millbrook, Pennsylvania. Sarah checked her watch. 9:47 p.m. She pulled out her phone and sent 3 identical texts to 3 different numbers. Party starts in 10. Bring noisemakers. Jake Morrison got the message at his hotel bar and immediately started driving toward Maple Street. Marcus Chen, Sarah's not-quite-dead brother who'd been laying low in Pittsburgh, got it and began the 2-hour sprint south in his modified Camaro. Detective Ray Morrison got it in his office and started putting together a very creative incident report. At exactly 9:57 p.m., Sarah knocked on the front door of the house on Maple Street. The man who answered was tall, lean, and stupid enough to open the door without checking who was on the other side. Sarah recognized him from the surveillance photos. Vincent Viper Caruso, recently paroled, recently employed in the pharmaceutical redistribution business. Chinese delivery, Sarah said, holding up the bags with a smile that would have made a great white shark nervous. We didn't order any, Viper began, but Sarah was already moving. The first bag contained her old friend from Afghanistan, white phosphorus smoke. The chemistry lab at Penn State would probably miss it eventually. Sarah pulled the pin and rolled it into the living room like a party favor from hell. Viper had exactly enough time to say, "What the?" before the world disappeared in billowing white clouds that turned breathing into an exercise in creative coughing. Sarah pulled on her gas mask, another item that had fallen off another truck, and went to work. The second bag contained flashbangs. Sarah distributed them throughout the ground floor like a very unstable Easter egg hunt, each one set to detonate exactly 90 seconds apart. The timing would keep the dealers confused and disoriented while she worked her way to the basement. The third bag contained her personal favorite, a small drone equipped with a very loud speaker and a strobe light that could trigger seizures in epileptics. Sarah launched it through the upstairs window and watched it begin broadcasting the sound of helicopters mixed with death metal at volumes that would make a jet engine jealous. Chaos, as it turned out, was a beautiful thing. Sarah moved through the smoke like a wraith, taking down dealers with the kind of precision that came from years of practice in much worse places. A pressure point here, a nerve strike there, carefully applied force that would leave them unconscious but breathing. She wasn't here to kill anyone tonight. She was here to save people. The basement door was reinforced steel with 3 different locks. Sarah bypassed all of them with a small shaped charge that she'd been saving for a special occasion. The door didn't so much open as cease to exist in any meaningful way. What she found in the basement made her blood run cold. 8 girls, ages maybe 15 to 20, chained to the walls like animals. Drugged, terrified, some of them barely conscious. A makeshift laboratory where pure heroin was being cut and packaged. Enough cash to buy a small country. And weapons, lots of weapons. Sarah began cutting chains with bolt cutters while speaking Spanish in the same calm voice she'd once used to talk frightened civilians through firefights. Estoy aquí para ayudar. Soy policía. Estás a salvo ahora. The girls stared at her through hollow eyes that had seen too much. One of them, maybe 17 with dark hair and defiant eyes despite everything, managed to whisper, "De verdad?" "De verdad," Sarah confirmed, helping her to her feet. "But we need to move. Now." That's when she heard the motorcycles. A lot of motorcycles coming fast. The Maple Street house wasn't just a way station, it was the headquarters. And tonight was apparently meeting night for every piece of human garbage within 100 miles. Sarah did quick math. 8 hostages who could barely walk, at least 20 new hostiles incoming, backup still minutes away. The odds had just shifted from challenging to mathematically ridiculous. Time for Plan B. Actually, time for Plan F, since Plans B through E had all involved significantly more backup and significantly fewer armed psychopaths. Sarah keyed her radio. "Morrison, I need an immediate evac for 8 civilians, basement level, and I need it 5 minutes ago." "Working on it," Morrison's voice crackled back. "State Police ETA is 15 minutes. "I don't have 15 minutes. I've got about 3. Sarah looked around the basement, taking inventory. Chemical lab meant volatile compounds. Weapons cache meant ammunition that would cook off in a fire. Gas line running along the wall meant potential for a very dramatic exit strategy. She started moving the girls toward the blown-out basement door. Everyone stays together, everyone stays quiet, and when I say run, you run like the devil himself is chasing you. Because he might be. The motorcycles were closer now, engines growing louder. Sarah could hear boots on the front porch, angry voices shouting over the sound of her drone still broadcasting its heavy metal concert upstairs. Time was up. Sarah pulled her last surprise from the delivery bag, a white phosphorus incendiary grenade that would turn the basement laboratory into something resembling the surface of the sun. She set the timer for 60 seconds and started moving the girls up the basement stairs. "Run," she whispered. "Run now." They ran. Through the smoke-filled house, past unconscious dealers, out the back door and into the night. Sarah brought up the rear, covering their escape with a pistol she'd liberated from one of the guards. Behind them, the house was waking up, angry voices shouting through the chaos. The motorcycles had arrived, at least 15 of them, maybe 20. Men in leather and chains and attitudes that suggested they weren't here for a book club meeting. Sarah counted weapons, calculated angles, and came to a conclusion that would have made her old drill sergeant proud. They were magnificently screwed. That's when the Camaro came screaming around the corner. Marcus Chen had apparently decided that speed limits were more like suggestions anyway, and he'd made the 2-hour drive from Pittsburgh in about 90 minutes. The Camaro took the turn onto Maple Street on 2 wheels, engine roaring like a mechanical dragon. Marcus had always been the dramatic one in the family. The car slammed into 3 motorcycles parked at the curb, sending them flying like metallic confetti. Marcus rolled out of the driver's seat with an assault rifle in his hands and murder in his eyes. "Sarah," he called out, "get the civilians clear." Jake Morrison's pickup truck appeared from the opposite direction, and Jake himself emerged with the kind of tactical gear that suggested he'd been planning for this particular Tuesday evening to go sideways. Between the two of them, they had the street covered while Sarah shepherded the 8 girls toward the relative safety of the next block. Behind them, the house on Maple Street erupted in flames as the incendiary grenade did its work. The explosion shattered windows for 3 blocks and lit up the night sky like a very angry Christmas tree. Sarah allowed herself exactly 30 seconds to appreciate the view before getting back to work. 8 traumatized girls needed medical attention, safe transportation, and probably about 17 different kinds of therapy. 20-plus armed drug dealers needed to be processed through the justice system, assuming any of them were still conscious when the smoke cleared. And somewhere in the chaos, Sarah Chen, the woman who was officially dead, needed to disappear again. Detective Morrison arrived with the state police 12 minutes later, just in time to secure the scene and start asking the kinds of questions that would keep internal affairs busy for months. The official report would describe a complex undercover operation targeting human trafficking, with significant cooperation from federal agencies that couldn't be named for security reasons. The 8 girls were taken to a safe house operated by people who specialized in helping survivors of trafficking. They would get new identities, counseling, and a chance to build lives that didn't involve being chained to basement walls. Most of the dealers survived with various degrees of smoke inhalation and creative bruising. 3 of them had to be hospitalized. None of them seemed interested in discussing what had happened that night, which worked out well for everyone involved. And Sarah? Well, Sarah Chen finished her last delivery. 2 days later, a woman with different papers, different hair, and a different name bought a bus ticket to Seattle. She carried nothing but a backpack and a letter of recommendation from Detective Ray Morrison to a police chief who understood that sometimes the best cops came from unconventional backgrounds. The woman who'd been Sarah Chen was gone, dissolved into the same shadows that had hidden her for 18 months. But somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, someone new was about to begin training at the police academy, carrying skills learned in darker places and a determination to use them for something better. In Millbrook, people still talk about the night the house on Maple Street burned down, about the mysterious explosion that lit up the sky and the drug ring that got broken up in spectacular fashion. They tell stories about federal agents and undercover operations and conspiracies that go all the way to the top. But they don't know about the delivery driver who saved 8 lives and disappeared into the night. They don't know about the ghost who became a legend in the space between one heartbeat and the next. That's probably for the best. Some legends are too dangerous to tell out loud. But if you're ever in a small town somewhere, and you see a delivery driver who moves a little too precisely, who watches the exits a little too carefully, who carries herself like she's been to hell and fought her way back out, well, you might want to tip her well. You never know when you might need someone like that on your side. After all, the devil's in the details, but sometimes the devil drives a Honda and carries takeout bags full of creative solutions to life's more complicated problems. And sometimes, that's exactly what the world needs. Don't forget to subscribe for more interesting stories like this.